Marks an awful anniversary here in the city. 1 year ago, the Twin Parks apartment buildings caught fire on 181st Street in the Bronx.
17 people died, most immigrants from Gambia. Dozens were critically injured, but all the deaths were caused by smoke inhalation. Smoke spread into hallways and stairwells as at least two self-closing doors failed to close.
So here to talk about what we have learned from the tragedy and what has changed in New York City is the Fire Commissioner Laura Kavanagh. So Commissioner, good to see you this morning. Thank you for being here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So obviously the fire taught us about closing the door, right? There were a heck of a lot of campaigns about closing doors after it. How have things been going? I mean, do you see that there are changes being made?
Yeah, we've made a lot of positive progress out of this tragedy. That's what we always hope to do every time we have a tragedy here. We want to do more to make sure we prevent this in the future. And we're working with our partner agencies to share data, to do education, to get out into the community and make sure that not only are buildings staying on top of making sure their self-closing doors are working, but also that families know how to keep themselves safe in the case of an emergency.
Yeah, and I think it's a good time to remind people why it is so important that if you are fleeing a fire, to make sure those doors are closed behind you. Can you tell our viewers why?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it is so critical, as you mentioned, all of these deaths in this incident were caused by smoke inhalation. So if you close the door behind you, you can contain the fire and the smoke to a single apartment. If you don't close the door, it spreads throughout. And obviously in the middle of an emergency, it's very hard for any of us to think about exactly what to do. And that's why we try to talk to people all year round, ask them to practice, ask kids to come home and practice with their parents so that if a tragedy strikes, you have that in the back of your head, that close the door is something that we all think about so often that we would do it automatically.
Yeah, I mean, there was another fire that the door was left open, and it was an apartment door, so close that door, pull it shut. But some of these are self-closing, like you've mentioned, right? So has the city done anything to make sure self-closing doors are in fact working, checking out buildings, inspecting them, so on and so forth?
Yeah, we are definitely doing inspections as our partner agencies. We've also, through the mayor's office, increased our data sharing. And so that helps us also know where to focus our inspections, where we can be the most effective throughout the city. So we've definitely made some progress. We'll continue to make some progress. We want to make sure something like this never happens again, and that, we need to support this community. And one way we can do that is to try to prevent anything like it from happening again.
So this fire, though, was started by a portable space heater, which a lot of folks are using this time of year because, in some cases, they think that it's a way to save money by using those small space heaters. It's been a pretty warm winter so far, but, they are a tremendous fire hazard, aren't they?
They are a hazard, especially if they're not used safely. So some of the legislation that was passed last year actually ensures that the safer heaters are the ones that are sold in the city of New York. So we think that's incredibly important, and we're grateful to the council for passing that legislation. But we also think education is a key part of this. And so we do a lot of outreach in schools talking about how you can safely use a space heater, making sure there's nothing around it when you use it, making sure that it shuts off before it overheats. Yeah. As you said, in the winter months, it's common for fires to go up. And one of the reasons is that people are trying to keep themselves warm.
Just on the door front again, because I remember this being a big issue of contention for people last year about whose responsibility it was and so on and so forth. If you're a resident in a building and it's a high rise and you notice that maybe the hallway self-closing door isn't properly working, it doesn't shut like it should, who should they report to and who is in charge of making the repair?
So it's a little different depending on where you live, but I would encourage anyone to check their doors regularly and report that immediately to their landlord.
Okay.
They can also call 311, but I would really encourage them to be checking it regularly. Like you said, one of the things that we found out here is, they weren't sure whether or not their doors were working. People don't always, you don't think about this stuff every day. None of us do. You think about it in the midst of a tragedy, and we want people to think about it before that. So, check all the doors in your building, check your own front door, and, immediately contact your landlord if it's not working.
Yeah, you had mentioned that, children practice with your family, adults practice with their children. Do you think, though, that maybe there should be mandatory fire drills in large buildings? Do you think something like that would be worthwhile at all?
I think we're always looking at other ways to do that. I think, potentially in large buildings, it could be helpful, but we really do believe that getting, actually to younger kids is really one of the key ways. I think, we've talked about this before, things like stop, drop, and roll, call 911 are ingrained in all of us. We don't even remember learning it, and that's because we learn it when we're young. And so we think, same thing with close the door, that kids are one of the best ways to get something that you'll remember no matter what's happening, no matter the emergency. That will be just automatic. So that's really our hope.
Commissioner, we're marking 1 year. It's a somber day today, but we're also in a few weeks marking, on a brighter note, on a more positive note, 1 year since you've really become commissioner. So what has been the one thing that's surprised you maybe the most over the past year in this position? You mean with the department for so long that you really knew the ins and outs already?
Yeah, this job, it always surprises you. That's the one thing I know about it. No day is ever the same. And certainly this has been a very difficult year for the fire department and a difficult year for the city. We've had a lot of loss of our own members, and that has been really heartbreaking. And then, fires like this, I was there that day at Twin Parks. And so, we feel that loss in the community as well. So I would say, I love this job, but it has high highs and low lows. I think maybe that's how I could summarize the last year.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate your time being with us this morning.
Thank you.
All right.
It's good to see you.
Yeah, Commissioner Laura Kavanagh.
Thank you. All right.